The mirror image project is very similar to the oils from last week in that it takes careful observation and using those 5 types of lines and shapes as we draw. The difference is this time we're asking the students to take an image, observe it, and then flip it over into a mirror image on the other side. So we're adding a second layer to their observation skills. For the ages 4 to 6, they're going to have this warm-up sheet. And to begin, we want them to get the idea of how do we flip something. So to start, if you have tessellation blocks like this, you would give one to each student, and then they would take it, place it on that side, and then flip it to see how we would do the same thing on the other side. But when we draw, we have to flip the image in our mind and simply see it the other way. So they could do that, and then take their pencil and either trace or draw the image on that side. And then the same would be with this shape here. If you had a tessellation block, you could have the students place it there and then practice flipping the other way. They then see the image in their mind and they have to flip it and draw it. If you don't have tessellation blocks, you can simply cut out shapes out of construction paper like that and like that, and have the students use paper as a way of flipping that image. After those two first sections with the paper or the block, you would go down to these sections, and the students just must do it without any type of help from an object. So they would have to study this straight line and a circle, flip it in their mind, and do the same thing over on that side. Now don't be afraid if the student isn't doing it correctly, go over there and talk them through it. Maybe they do something like this. That's close, but we could say, how does that angle go? Does it go a long way out or does it just go straight down? Well, it goes a long way out. So your student could try again, and simply asking them questions is going to help them observe that line even better. So again, going through, finishing those up. And then we're going to move on to the actual final worksheet, which is the Liberty Bell. When I made this Liberty Bell image for the 4 to 6-year-olds, I did a lot of areas where the students will first begin to trace lines. I think that the mirror image drawing is a really hard thing to do, especially for young students. So I wanted to help them along and feel confident in the beginning of it by tracing, and then they can go into a more challenging thing where they have to kind of be on their own and figure it out by flipping it in their head. So to start with, let's start with the traced areas. And you, of course, can have the example of the worksheet in this worksheet to show the students as you're doing it, so they can see your example first and then copy along. So first we're going to start with that line. We know that it goes out and then it comes down. So then I'm going to go out and come down. Oh, it's getting a little tricky. Let's go back to this side and observe what we see. We see that it curves to the side and comes in and then goes up. If your students are having trouble, have them take their finger, go in and curve up, and do it as many times as they need. They can feel the way it goes, and up. And then this side will do the same, in and up. Now we can see how it feels with our pencil, in and up. We see that this side goes down, up, and down again. What does it remind you of? Kind of like a sideways S shape. It kind of in, up, and down. And we can see that it's already helping us on this side. So first we can feel it or see it, and then we're going to do it with our pencil. Awesome. As you can see, I'm not doing any of the details yet. I'm going to start with the basic outline and then add on those other things later. This side, if I feel it, I can have it go out, it curves, and it's long, it goes a long way down. Now, of course, we have to do the same thing on the other side. It goes out and it curves a long way down. Just to help the younger students with knowing where to go, I've set these little gray dots here to give them an endpoint for their traveling line. So let's go ahead and have it travel out, travels a long way down, and it curves just like that. And we're going to end up at that destination point there. Students, if they're trying to get the size right and the mirror image and it's just kind of overwhelming, this is just going to make it a little bit simpler so they can just focus on the mirror image without trying to make everything else exactly perfect. Now I know that my line changes. It curves outward. So I'll study that line, kind of feel the curve, and replicate it over on that side. I know that I have some more horizontal lines here and here. Are they exactly straight? Close to it, but I see a little bit of curve. So I'm going to study that and I'm going to replicate it right over there. The same thing down here. Now your students are probably going to even struggle with doing this. They might get frustrated, they might want to stop, or they might want to have you draw for them. Resist the urge to do that and just always talk through, what do you see? Tell me about the curved line or the straight line, and just have them talk to you through it, because even the act of just seeing it is going to help them replicate it better. Now we can go on to the details. They could start with things they see. You can say, what else do we see? What else is a mirror image on this? And they might notice these things up here. What shapes are they? Squares? Yeah. What kind of lines would we use for that? Curved lines? No. We're going to use angled lines, and that means we stop and we go. So I'm going to replicate this one. I go, stop, and go. And that gives me nice angled lines. Now that was a little bit too big. I'll try and make it more accurate. This one just the same place away? No, this one's a little further away. So let's make sure that we go a little bit further in to make it a mirror image. What else do we see? We see some straight lines. Do they go straight down? No, they go in. So ours will have to go in towards the center as well, because those go in towards the middle. Just like that. What else do they see? They're going to see some curved lines. You can have them describe it to you. What kind of shape does that remind you of? For me, it reminds me of like a little door right here, curved line door, but they can describe it any way they like and talk to you about that. And then the final one is we see some shapes down here. We don't want to just slap any old curved line on there. We want to look about the size and the shape here. So this one's really, really small and it's on the edge. So I'm going to go over to this edge and do my small curved line. This one's more towards the center, about halfway from the edge to the middle. I can go about halfway from the edge to the middle here. This one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to try and study that line and replicate it to the best that I can. Now the Liberty Bell was not made with a crack in it, right? But we're so used to seeing it with a crack. So we can talk a little bit about the history of the Liberty Bell, the words that were inscribed on it, why it was made, things like that. Then we can also talk about the crack that happened down the middle of it. The crack was actually, when they tried to restore it, part of that restoration was widening the crack so it would stop cracking more. So it's a nice big crack we can see now. We're going to draw that crack, so I'll do the beginning and then the students would follow along with what I did. We'll talk about the lines that I used. It starts here in the center and it kind of winds up, goes to the left a little bit, and goes pretty far up like that. So I used a little bit of a wiggly line and then a straight line, and then they can draw the crack on their Liberty Bell as well. Now here comes the question. My Liberty Bell was a mirror image. Now I added an off-center line to it, and you can ask the students, is our drawing still a mirror image? Why or why not? And so they might have lots of answers, and they might want to know what you think. I personally would think that it's still a mirror image because most of it is exactly the same on both sides. But if your students argue that, oh, it's not a mirror image because it's not exactly the same on both sides, you can leave it at that. You don't have to give them your thoughts, but just let the students discuss among themselves what a mirror image means and what it means to do a drawing that's in that category. If you have time after you've done that, then you can add some shading lines. And we're going to talk about shading in later weeks as well. So this is kind of our starting point to shading, and we'll keep talking about that subject as we go on. To make it look a little bit more rounded and three-dimensional, we're going to add some of these slightly curved shading lines over here. And when we do lots of lines close together, it makes it look like shadow. And if I curve them, that kind of follows the curve of the bell. It starts to look a little bit more three-dimensional. So you can have your students practice those lines, again, if there's time, on their bell, and they can see how adding that shadow changes the look of the object.